Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a good Monday. I had to remind myself that today's Monday because it's kind of weird. I don't know. With New Year's being on a Sunday, I don't know. For some reason, it just felt a little bit strange. I recognize I'm a bit grainy. The internet, for some reason, right now is a little bit weak. I think that when I share the screen share should be better. I don't mind that I'm kind of a blustery, blotchy mess. So long as you guys can hear me and you guys can see the other screens. Give me just 1 second. Let me see if one second here. Let me try one thing. I don't know if that's any better. No, maybe not. Let me try this. Okay. Trying to troubleshoot as soon as I go live is never fun. Okay, well, let me just say hi to folks in the chat. Maybe it'll eventually clear up a little bit here. So we've got Living Life with and Singing Songs with Mallory says hello from cold Utah. Hope everyone is having a good new year so far. We've got thanks so much, Mallory. I hope you're having a good New Year's too. Not a drama llama. Thanks so much for checking in. Good afternoon from Columbus, Ohio. Good afternoon to you as well. Where else are folks coming in from? Let's see here. Let's go through the chat. I always love finding where people are coming in from. Let's see. I see Uncivil Law in the chat. Hey, Kurt. How's it going? I hope you're having a good new year as well. We've got Keith Gregory. Hi from Kentucky. Hello, Keith. We've got, let's see, we've got a lot of New Year's wishes, which is always good. It's always good. Let's see. Let's see here. I'm going through some more, trying to get caught up here, but also, we've got Mountain Princess 207 from Maine. Good to see you. We've got, who else have we got? I know we've got a lot of people saying I'm blurry. We've got Janice Driver from Vancouver, Washington. Happy to see you too. B, checking in from Germany as always. Hey, B, hope you're doing well. Good to see you again. Ellen, not Sarah Lee from Carolina Beach, North Carolina. Otterly Bell from Sweden. Love to see it. Debbie Faison Cook from Florida again. Good to see you, Debbie. Uncivil Law from deep in the heart of Texas. Emily Daisy from Tampa, Florida. Hello, hello. Donna Grace in the UK. Awesome. And Mantha Johnny from the weirdly mild snow melting Montreal. Okay. Nice. Jenner G from Sicklerville, New Jersey. Great to see you. Has 01 from Alberta, Canada. We've got Martha W from Oregon. Gina D from Boca Raton, Florida. Aussie J from probably Australia, if it's Aussie J, right? um, and we've got, I guess Rissa's also from Australia, from what it sounds like. Aaron Morgan coming in from England. Got your cup of tea, pups fed, and so happy to be here. Oh, I'm so glad. So glad. Christine Bucci Walker from Livonia, Michigan. Love to see it. Interlocution from a rainy Arizona. Good thing. Water that desert. Jim Halpert from Michigan. We've got Jana Bainham from Las Vegas. Hello. We've got Dancing Beagle from OKC. Great. How's it going? Linda Ritter, Happy New Year from Indiana. Sandra Ramirez from Savannah, Georgia. Still. Hey, Shireen. Good to see you also. Let's see. Also, oh gosh, now I always try to remember it. Elizabeth is an easy one, but Lockmilkin, maybe Lockmilkin 11 Elizabeth. I'm so sorry if I completely mispronounced that, from Saxony, Germany. It's beautiful. I one of these days I will probably be able to pronounce this properly. We've got Robbie Dobby from Nova Scotia. Good to see you, Robbie Dobby. So, and I see more good wishes for Rick Hogue. So for anybody that doesn't know, he's been in the hospital since December 30th. And he's had surgery. He's had all kinds of things. He's been going through a tough time. So he did actually, so this is, I'm always uncomfortable with talking about specific details, but this has been confirmed, from other people. So, this isn't new coming from me, but it has been confirmed. I know that, Rob has been talking about it, as has Mrs. Hogue, of course. So she's been kind of, we've been sort of taking our cues from her, because obviously this is a very, anytime we're talking about health stuff, it's a very personal, very private kind of thing. And I never want to be overstepping any sort of privacy bounds, but, so it has been shared that he did have a stroke. So, he has been in the hospital. He's had surgery. I can, let's see, Rob had a good update from, I guess, yesterday, on Twitter. He said, update on Hogue Law. He's still ventilated, but they've started bringing down sedation to run a few tests. Still very much in a wait and see, but he gave the doc a right hand thumbs up on command. Left side is responding to pinch tests. Continued prayers appreciated. So absolutely. If you didn't know, if you are the praying type, prayers are absolutely appreciated. Good wishes for him are absolutely appreciated. Mrs. Hogue has been occasionally tweeting about, what's been going on. She tweeted like a couple hours ago, something about like, going into the hospital, with all of you with me. And she had like a GIF from the, Avengers Endgame, like when everybody like shows up through all the portals, because she's had this swelling of support for them and for Rick, which has been a very beautiful sort of silver lining to everything that has happened. So it's looking like things are certainly not out of the woods, right? Not out of the woods by any means, but they are looking, they're looking encouraging, right? So encouraging, hopeful. So those prayers are definitely helping. So if you are the praying type and you have been praying, please do continue to do so. If you're not the praying type, just good vibes, good feelings, good thoughts towards them, towards their whole family. That is absolutely the best thing to do. On top of that, if you want to help in a material way, in a way that really does help them, going to Hogue Law, the channel, going to Rick's channel, and if also buying merch, but also like, I mean, if you are not in a position to like actually, like buy merch or donate any kind of like super thanks or anything like that to the channel, just watching his content running a playlist of Hogue content, take Lawyers and Dragons and run it on a playlist all day in the background while you're working or doing chores or something. That is the kind of stuff that can help, really. So it's definitely helpful. So anyway, so that's that. We're all praying for Rick, all praying for Mrs. Hogue and for their family, their kids. And yeah, and hopefully things continue to look encouraging and hopeful for for them moving forward. So yeah, anyhow, that's, I think, about all I have to say about that at this time. Let's watch some trial, shall we? It's been a little bit of time since we watched this trial, the Menendez trial. This is Classic Trials. And we are on episode 11 now of the trial, and we're still in the prosecution's case in chief. They've been going on for a while, and we're going to get into some spice today. So we've got one witness first that is primarily going to be audio testimony, because I don't know exactly why. I mean, maybe I know that there are some people that are following this series who are very, very, very well versed in this particular case. I intentionally didn't do too much research before going into it because I wanted to have my live reactions to this in real time as much as possible. And although I do try to do a little bit of pre sort of review of the testimony to make sure that I can sort of time things as well as I can, or in today's case, to try to kind of moderate things a little bit, because our second witness today, so the first witness is mostly audio testimony from Mary Ellen Mahar, who is, I think, an employee who worked for a jeweler at the time, probably having to do with them buying watches or jewelry or something like that. I haven't listened to the actual testimony itself, but I, other than the very beginning when she said her name, and it's just so that I can have that information for putting that out there. Hers will be like 30 minutes of testimony, I think. Then after that, we're going to do the first part of listening to the testimony of Dr. Irwin Golden, who is the medical examiner who examined Jose and Kitty Menendez. So, of course, with the medical examiner, this means we've got autopsies, we've got autopsy photos, and a lot of these are pretty gruesome. Of course, this was a case that was televised for the whole nation. So this is out there. It's not exactly like this is, some sort of like new private information. This was available on TVs, nationwide, but YouTube still has its own policies on what kinds of things you can and can't show. And there are some images that I think, for me personally, I think that they might get a little bit risky in terms of YouTube's terms of service. And I don't exactly want to run the risk with my channel for these kinds of things. So one thing that I will do is I will drop the links to both of these sources for testimony from Court TV's website. And if anybody actually does want to see the full thing, with all of these images and everything, to get the raw experience of what the jury actually saw, everything, you guys can go and see it elsewhere. But yeah. So and yeah, I see Diana, it's not just you. My internet is unfortunately somehow kind of spotty. And it's, yeah, unfortunately, just the way that things are probably going to end up having to be for this episode. But most likely when I share my screen, you guys will be able to see that more clearly. I have no idea why it makes me pixelated and not like, for example, the chats that I bring up on the screen. Like those look fine when I show those. Anyway, okay. So, anyhow, so that's just a little bit of a caveat for today. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk of what the medical examiner saw, and analyzed and, put together during the autopsies. So if that is difficult for you, just want to give a sort of a warning at the top of the hour, that is, it might get a little tough for you. If that's the case, don't worry about it. Take a step back, take care of your mental health, take care of, take care of yourself, right? It's not worth it. So yeah. So anyway, so there will be some parts where I pull the feed from the screen visually, but we can still hear it because I don't exactly want YouTube to punish me for these images in this trial. If you catch my drift. So, okay. And with that, we should probably get to it. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Yeah. See, I think that's, at least for me, it's clear. Let's see when it shows up. There's always a 10-second delay between what I see of myself. Oh yeah. Yeah. That looks fine. Cool. Okay. All right. Let's get to it. All right.
We're now ready to resume. And the next witness has been here once before already, and we wanted to make sure that we could get to her before we took a break. So this witness will now be testifying in the trial, and the people may call that witness.
People call Mary Ellen Mahar.
My name is Mary Ellen Mahar, Mahar.
All right, Mr. Kuriyama.
Ms. Mahar, how are you employed?
Presently,
Yes.
in the jewelry industry.
Directing your attention to August 24th, 1989, how were you employed?
I was employed by Slavik's Jewelry Store.
And were you working that day?
Yes, I was.
Which store were you working at?
The Century City store?
Is that located at 10250 Santa Monica Boulevard?
Yes, it is.
At approximately 10:30 in the morning, were you waiting on customers?
Yes.
We have the date again, please.
Yes, that's the 24th of August, 1989. Approximately 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Approximately.
Oh,
Do you see anyone in the court?
sorry. Yeah. Aaron Morgan, you see a rainbow screen. That's because I think they did this intentionally because I don't know, maybe there was a privacy issue or something. She didn't want to be on screen or something, or they agreed that she didn't. I don't know. I'm not sure. So, but it's some kind of an identity protection kind of thing. I don't know exactly what the story is, but that seems to be the case. So not just for you. It's not an error. This is how they decided to go about it for one reason or another. I'm sure someone in the chat at some point, or maybe in comments on the replay, might have a better idea of what happened and why. So, all right, let's continue.
The courtroom that you're waiting on that day,
Yes.
would you identify those persons?
The two gentlemen, one in blue and white shirt and the other in a green sweater.
The witness is referring to the two defendants at counsel table.
Would you describe for the jurors the transaction that took place that day between yourself and these two defendants?
They wanted to look at Rolex watches, and we did so. They selected some watches.
I'm taking it as an objection to you today.
Objection overruled, but if you can specify who did what, it would help. Mr. Kuriyama.
Ms. Mahar, do you recall which one of the defendants did that in particular?
Not specifically, no. They were together.
Okay. They were together, and were you showing them Rolex watches?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall which kinds of Rolex watches you showed these defendants?
Specifically,
Okay.
yes, I do.
What did you show them?
That's from Court TV's end.
I showed them a lot. Do you want to know specifically what was purchased or what was shown?
Did you actually sell Rolex watches that day to these defendants?
Yes, I did. I sold them 3.
Okay, and would you describe for the jurors what types of Rolex watches you sold to them?
One Rolex watch that I sold to them was a gentleman's model, 18 karat yellow gold, referred to as a presidential model. A second watch that was purchased was a stainless steel Rolex known as a Submariner model. And the third one was a stainless steel model referred to as a Datejust model. Datejust.
Does that particular watch have a diamond?
Right,
dial?
Shireen.
Can I remember today, did it have a diamond dial? Not specifically, no.
Did you sell these defendants anything else at the jewelry store?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
Money clips.
Then I have a poster I'd like to have marked as Exhibit 71. Appears to be 3 separate receipts.
All right, Exhibit 71.
And counsels, will you stipulate that for American Express account number 3728-082918-12002, that the card holder, card member for that particular account was Jose Menendez, counsel for Erik Menendez,
So stipulated.
and counsel for Joseph Lyle Menendez. Thank you. Any question?
Yes.
Mahar, directing your attention to Exhibit 71. Could you explain some of the information on these 3 receipts? That is, you were working at Slavics that day. Is that correct?
Yes, and the location is indicated by the store number immediately after the word Slavics.
And would that be the number 2183?
Yes, it is.
That
That would designate that it was the Century City location on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Did the defendants present to you an American Express
Brittany, that's a
credit
good,
card to make these purchases that you've described?
Yes, they did.
that's a good point, Brittany.
And was the name on that credit card J.E. Menendez?
There were initials. I believe the first initial was J, the second initial I don't recall, and the name Menendez.
What procedure did
Brittany Chanel, it's an interesting point. I wonder if it's because this is still early on in the days of trial coverage with cameras in the courtroom. I wonder if the conversation was, we can't trust the media to point their cameras only where we tell them to, maybe, or something. I'm not sure. Because it also looks like there's just one camera in the courtroom and that it pans from one place to another when they want to show an exhibit, for example, when they want to show the witness. Whereas today, I mean, at least I'm thinking of the trials that I've most recently watched with cameras in the courtroom. It looks like they typically have maybe 2 cameras or more even, where they'll change an angle and then go from one feed to another. Yeah. Anyway, but so yeah, maybe they just didn't trust the camera person to not show the witness. I'm not sure.
Here did you have to follow with respect to getting authorization for the defendants to use that particular card that was presented to you?
They had to follow a somewhat different procedure than normal in that The clients were not known, and there were initials only on the credit card. So instead of using normal procedures, I called American Express and asked to speak to a supervisor for supervisory approval on this sale because there were only initials, not first names, and the individuals were not known to me. I had not seen either one of them before the date that they purchased the watches.
Did you get such approval?
Yes, I did.
Were you given instructions by the authorities regarding the actual sale and what you had to get by way of identification from the defendants?
Objection, prosecution.
Objection sustained. You might as well go on to what actually she did.
Okay. What did you do after you got the authorization for the credit card sale?
What did I do? I would have established with American Express that whichever one of the gentlemen signed the American Express was in fact authorized to use the card. I would have been given an approval number, and I would have obtained identification to make sure that someone else was not using this card.
What sort of identification would you be looking to in that regard?
A photo identification, generally about the only thing that is acceptable really is a California driver's license or any driver's license from the cardholder's home state, wherever that happens to be.
And did you get such identification from the person that signed for the purchase?
I believe I did. To the best of my recollection, I would have, yes.
That would have been required.
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not the defendants had any bags with them on that day?
Specifically, yes, they had bags. I mean, it's a large shopping center. They were carrying bags.
Now, with respect to Exhibit 71, there are certain amounts listed on those receipts. Can you see those amounts?
Yes, I can.
Do you have a recollection of how much the purchase price was on that date for the watches and the money clips?
The one for the largest amount, $9,968.40, most likely is for the solid 18 karat gold model, the presidential model. The second largest amount of $4,762 is probably the two stainless steel Rolexes. The $309 specifically is probably money clips. Beyond that, I cannot tell you exactly at this time.
On August 24th, when you made the sale to the defendants, had you heard of the killings of the Mr. and Mrs. Menendez prior to that?
Yes, I had read about it in the newspaper.
When you were presented the American Express card with Menendez on the card, did you know that the defendants were the sons of the people that had been killed?
Specifically, by the time the card was presented, I can't tell you that whether or not now I knew that at that time. Am I making myself clear? I
Maybe you
mean,
can clarify a little bit more.
okay, when the card was presented to me, did I know at that point that they had just recently lost their parents? Right now, today, I can't tell you specifically. I mean, the name had significance.
Was that an unusual sale for you?
Extremely unusual for a couple of reasons.
What are those reasons?
One was their age, and the other was the size, the dollar figure of the sale.
With this particular sale, did you have to take extraordinary steps to get the watches to the defendants?
Just for one watch, the solid gold presidential model. The store that I was in was out of stock, and I had to Drive to Torrance to the Bailey Banks and Biddle store in Delamo. Pardon me? Bailey Banks and Biddle.
Hey, boss attorney Bree. Good to see
And
you.
pick up that watch from our sister store and drive back to Century City so that it could be delivered.
Do you recall a conversation which took place between one of the brothers and another person over the phone in your presence?
Yes, I do.
And would you describe for the jurors how that conversation took place?
The conversation took place because they needed to make wanted to make a telephone call. And as a matter of courtesy, telephones were always within easy reach for a customer to use. And I put the telephone on the counter to be used, so it was very close to me, within 3 or 4 feet, whatever the exact width of the counter is, I don't know today. And they made a telephone call.
Objection, Your Honor, to the use of play.
One of the 2 gentlemen made a telephone call.
All right, with that modification, objection is overruled.
Do you recall the nature of that conversation?
The nature of the conversation, I heard one side of the conversation pretty clearly.
And with respect to that one side of the conversation, was it by one of the defendants?
Yes, it was.
What did you hear?
I heard the person that was being spoken to, the name was Carlos. The upcoming memorial service that was to take place in New Jersey was mentioned, and that the purchase of the watches was discussed, and whichever one of the defendants made the telephone call told Carlos that they didn't think it would be appropriate to wear the solid gold Rolex Presidential to the memorial service.
Did he request any money at that time from the person that he was talking to?
Did he request any? Did he request any money?
Do you recall giving a report to the Beverly Hills detectives on or about?
I'm going to object to this one. She hasn't answered the first question.
All right, do you have that recollection, yes or no?
Do I have?
About a conversation regarding money?
Specifically right now, can I recall one? No.
Okay, your next question.
Do you recall making a statement to the Beverly Hills detectives in this case on or about September 11th, 1989?
That I did in fact hear? Yes, I do.
Do you think it would refresh your present recollection to take a look at that report?
It may. I mean, it's been a long time. If I made a statement to that effect in 1989, it must have happened. Asking me in 1993, I can't recall a specific dollar figure. I hope that I make myself clear.
Yes.
Then I'm going to move to strike the response as non-responsive.
All right, the objection sustained. The entire last answer is stricken. You may approach the witness.
Yes, I made that statement. It's in quotes.
Would you relate to the jury what that statement was?
I'm going to object at this time. I don't think it's clear whether this refreshes her recollection or she just remembers saying she may have made it.
All right, the objection is sustained. If you can pursue that, Mr. Kuriyama.
Ms. Mahar, does this report refresh your present recollection as to what you told the detectives and as to what happened on the 24th of August? I know it's been a long time, but reviewing this report, does that refresh your present recollection?
Everything in this paragraph, I remember very clearly, except the statement about the cash advance. If it's in my statement, it must have happened. I don't.
I'm going to object and move to strike. I think the question is whether it refreshes her recollection.
All right, objection sustained.
Yeah.
Objection sustained after the answer no.
I have nothing further at this time.
All right, cross-examination.
Let's see how well they call into question the identity of the buyers,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Mahar,
et cetera, et cetera.
You indicate you recall the incident of these two young men coming into the jewelry store. Is that
Yes, I
correct?
do.
And you remember that you had to check whether they were authorized to use the American Express card.
Yes, I
Is that
do.
correct?
Yes.
So is there a process by which people other than those named on the card actually have permission to use the card?
Yes, there is.
And you would not have sold these items to them if it wasn't for the fact they were authorized to use this card. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, you've indicated that it's usually your practice to ask for some identification.
Yes.
Okay, do you have an independent memory of asking for it at this time, or you just think that that's what you usually do, so you probably did it then?
I probably did it then, and also it's, how can I best describe it? In a sale of that amount, if you don't follow the proper procedures and someone who's not been authorized to use that card, then a credit card company can charge it back to the store. And that is part of one's responsibility, is to uphold the proper procedures to make sure that items, whether it's $2,000 or $20,000, do not in effect get charged back to the store as a loss.
Okay, so you would want some picture identification, is that correct?
Yes, I would. So in the event that there were fraudulent use of a card, I would still have a job
Okay,
after that fraud had been discovered.
I think you indicated that a driver's license, either California or the person's home state, if they were from out of state, would be acceptable.
Yes,
Is that
it would.
correct?
Yes.
And would any other photo identification, such as a university identification that had a photograph on it, or,
It would be pretty irregular to accept that.
okay, but an out-of-state driver's license would be
Certainly,
acceptable?
certainly, yes.
And when you looked at the receipts that Mr. Kuriyama showed you today, and you looked at each one and said it was probably for this watch, it was probably for that item, I take it you don't have a specific memory as to those receipts in terms of what exactly was bought with those receipts, based on the amount. Is that correct?
Is that correct? To the best of my recollection, knowing what those watches cost and prices change and so forth, that is probably very accurate. There is somewhere exist an itemized breakdown that's going to be in my handwriting that would eventually prove that out.
Okay, but you don't have that here?
No, I do not have
Okay,
that here,
so,
no.
but looking at the receipts, you're just making your best guesses based on what you know things to cost.
Yes,
This phone conversation that you told us about, I believe the phone is on the counter in the jewelry store. Is that correct?
placed there when a client needs to use it, yes.
Okay. Was there any effort to make this phone call in a private setting? Or was it made right in front of you? So
It was made right in front of me.
So there was nothing secretive
Kit
about the
Kat,
phone
I
call?
agree.
No,
And the person talking on the phone was talking openly about buying watches and where was appropriate
yes,
to
they
wear
were.
them?
Yes, they were. He was, excuse me.
And seeking some advice about it, I believe you said?
That's how I took it to be, perhaps just asking an opinion.
Okay. Do you remember what the demeanor was like of these two young men on that day? I mean, was this a party? Was this fun? Was there a lot of joking going on, or was their demeanor otherwise?
The demeanor was not, it was not a party, no. I would have to say somewhat subdued.
And in the past, have you used words such as showing stress, subdued, and serious to describe their behavior?
Have I before? I've made statements, I've testified before grand jury. Perhaps those are words I have chosen.
Okay. Are those words that seem appropriate based on what you observed?
Do they seem subdued? How can one determine when you've never seen two people before whether or not they're stressed? I mean, it's rather difficult to determine.
So if a police officer
Maybe.
in September of 1989 wrote down that you said they appeared to be under stress, do you think that that might have been something you said at that time?
It's possible. It's hard for me to remember exactly what I said almost 4 years ago, but it's possible, yes.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may. Counsel, where are you?
And you indicated that you testified before the grand jury. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And at that time, if I indicated that you had testified that they were subdued, I believe you said that that would be a correct description of their behavior.
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination by the defendant, Erik Menendez.
Okay, next cross-examination now.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mahar.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Mahar, this Slavix was located in the Century City Shopping Mall.
Yes,
Correct.
it was.
Okay, and was it in fact near the Bullock's department store?
Quite close, yes.
And on August 24th, 1989, these two customers just wandered into the store in the morning, correct?
Objection calls for speculation and wandering.
Sustained.
Had
It's-
anybody, had,
You have to make a conscious
So
choice.
wait, hold on a
Okay.
second. There's no question. You have to wait for another question.
Excuse me.
okay. You had no prior notice that they were coming in, you just saw them in the store, correct?
Yes,
In fact, some customers in your store will call first and arrange to come in. But
Yes.
These were just walk-ins.
yes.
And in fact, when the two walked in the store, did it appear that at least one of them had been shopping at Bullock's?
Yes.
You recall seeing the Bullock's shopping bags?
There were bags. Bullock's does seem to ring a bell, yes.
Now, Mr. Kuriyama asked you about a statement that you made to the Beverly Hills Police Department on September 11th, 1989. Do you recall being interviewed by the police on that date?
On that date specifically, I was interviewed. It could have been 2 weeks. It could have been 3 or 4 weeks later. I did make a statement to the Beverly Hills Police Department, yes.
And that statement was made shortly after August 24th, when these two young men came into your store.
Yes.
And in making the statement to the police, did you try and give them correct and accurate information?
Yes, I did.
And at the time you made the statement to the police, it was within days of having had these two men in the store and selling these various items. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Days, I'm still recalling 2 to 3 weeks after the sale. Specifically, I can't tell you the date of the exact first interview.
And isn't it correct that your memory of what occurred on August 24th was probably better back in September of 1989 than it is today?
Yes,
And in fact, when the men from the Beverly Hills Police Department talked to you, were they taking notes? That is, writing down what you had to say?
in 1993, can I say exactly did they do that? I don't recall. I imagine so. Police always take notes when you make statements.
Okay. Has anyone ever showed you, Ms. Mahar, a report about the interview with you a few weeks or 2 weeks after the sales to help you remember what you said?
I was mailed a copy of my grand jury testimony.
Did anyone ever show you a copy of the police report about the interview back in September of 1989?
There may have been part of that in what was mailed to me prior to this proceeding.
I take it from your
I
uncertainty.
believe I have seen part of it. I don't know where one ends and another begins. I don't mean to be vague, but I believe that part of that was.
Okay. And have you read that police report?
Yes, I have. It was mailed to me in June of
This witness is doing
1993.
well.
And do you recall talking to the police and in September of 1989 and telling them, the police, that one of the two young men was doing most of the talking?
Yes, I recall that because that is part of what was mailed to me before when I was called to appear at this proceeding.
Okay. And is that in fact what occurred in August of 1989? That is, that one of the two men was doing the majority of the talking?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And is it also correct that the other one, that is the non-talker,
Mhm.
was relatively quiet?
Yes, I recall that, yes.
And when you spoke to the police in September of 1989, were you able to tell the police which of the two young men that was in the store took the active talking role in this transaction?
In all honesty, I do not remember.
Okay. Do you think looking at your police, the copy of your police report would help you remember whether you were able to identify which one took the active talking role?
I believe I did at that time. I have not memorized what I said in
The
1989.
question was, would it help you if you looked at the report?
It may.
Okay, thank you. May I approach Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Mahar, does reading that report help you remember whether you were able to identify one of the two young men as being the one who was doing the talking?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you identify that young man as the one that was doing the talking? Did you call him by name?
Well, at some point during a transaction, you learn people's names. Specifically, how did I learn them? Did I introduce myself? I don't remember.
Okay. In any event, did reading the report help you remember which one was doing most of the talking?
Yes, because I indicate which one does most of the talking in my initial statement from 1989.
Okay. And do you now remember which one was doing the talking based on reading your report?
Yes.
Okay. And which one was doing the talking?
Lyle.
Okay. It was Lyle that appeared to have the dominant role.
Apparently, yes.
Okay.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken. The juries are admonished to disregard it.
Based on what you saw in the store that day,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Lyle was doing the talking, correct?
Yes.
And it was also Lyle who made the phone call, correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I have nothing further at this time.
Any redirect?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Mahar, in that same report, did you indicate that the other person with Lyle selected his own money clip?
Yes.
Now, getting back to your call to the American Express company,
Yes.
and would you describe what kind of authorization you got? That is, the defendants were not on the actual card that was presented to you, correct?
Correct.
What steps did you have to take? What information did you have to give in order for them to be approved with respect to the purchase that they intended to make that day?
Of the procedure is that the credit card number is given. In this case, I went directly to a supervisor to seek approval because of the initials and last name only being on the card as opposed to a first name, middle initial.
Okay, when you say to a supervisor, was that a supervisor at American Express?
At American Express, that's right, yes.
And
And I explained that the individuals were not known to me. I had initials only on the card. The amount of the sale, is this individual who wants to sign for this merchandise authorized to use this credit card? And I was told, yes, they were, and given an approval code.
did you indicate to the person that you were talking to that the defendants had the same last name as the card holder?
Yes, I did.
Did you indicate anything further with respect to your understanding at that point that the parents had been killed?
You're going to object. Cause for hearsay.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
That wouldn't, to my recollection, that wouldn't be something that would come up. I mean, it's business. You establish identity and whether or not someone's authorized to use a particular credit card and establish that identity, and that's pretty much all there is to it.
Was there information that came to you regarding the limit on that particular card?
Specifically, yes, there was.
What was that limit?
American Express indicated to me that limit was $250,000.
Wow. That's a big limit on a credit
And
card.
that this purchase of just over $15,000 was approved by them through your phone conversation with them?
Yes, it was.
Now, Exhibit 71 is not something that you prepared through your employment with Slavic, is that correct?
No, it is not.
Did you generate receipts or paperwork yourself relative to your employment with Slavic?
Yes,
Jewelers.
yes.
What sort of paperwork did you generate?
Receipts that are itemized that give specific stock number. Also, the warranty numbers for the Rolexes are on that receipt, as well as signature for the actual purchase, name and address.
The signature would be of the purchaser would sign
Yes,
on your
yes.
receipt?
Yes,
Now, you had indicated that you would get some kind of photo identification.
yes, and that number from a driver's license would have been written on the receipt that I hand wrote.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Anything else? All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused. Now, let me see counsel at the sidebar. All right, counsel, have a few matters for
Look at that paisley
the court
tie.
to consider before we resume with the next witness. And the next witness will be testifying before both juries, but there's no sense in starting at this late hour. We'll start tomorrow morning with the witness. And I'll excuse you then. We'll start tomorrow morning. It'll take about a half an hour perhaps for that hearing. So I'll have time in the morning to do that, and we'll ask that both juries return at 9:45 tomorrow morning, at which time we'll resume with the testimony of the next witness. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any opinions about it. And we'll resume tomorrow at 9:45. I know we've been moving back and forth between courtrooms here, and it's a little difficult. Try to accommodate whichever jury was here at a particular moment, but doesn't always work that
All
way.
right,
As far
so we can skip through that and just go right on to the next witness. Now, this is where things are going to get a little bit trickier, but yeah, we'll roll with it, right? Okay, this is going to be Dr. Irwin Golden. Okay, so we've got a new paisley tie for the judge and for Judge Wiseman. And yeah, let's see what this witness looks like. Okay. And also for anybody just now coming in, sort of airdropping in, this witness is the medical examiner. So there's going to be a lot of detail from autopsies of the two parents, and that's the wounds are kind of gruesome. So they are going to show some photos. I am going to try to pull the screen away when they have some photos up, because they just kind of show a lot. So if that bothers you, the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can to try to keep things within YouTube's terms of service here. Yeah. So if that bothers you, take it up with YouTube and their terms of service. Basically, to me, it's not worth risking my whole channel for. So, okay. Anyway, let's continue on with it. So you'll hear the audio throughout, but if I pull the screen away and it's like just me for 10 seconds, it'll be because I know that they're about to show a certain, like a photo that's like particularly gruesome. I hope I get it every time. If it's not perfect, sorry. But I will be doing my best. Okay. So let's continue on now with Dr. Irwin Golden.
While the defendants are in court with their lawyers, the people are represented, and the juries are both present in the courtroom. Good morning to all of you. Good morning. And we're ready to resume with the trial, and the people will call their next witness.
You could call Dr. Golden to the stand. Just raise your right hand. If you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the trial shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Just take the stand and state your name for the record.
He has some kind of funny mannerism.
Irwin L. Golden, IRWINGOLDEN.
So we've got another Paisley
Dr. Golden,
tie.
what do you do for a living, please?
I'm a deputy medical examiner. I'm employed by the Department of Coroner in Los Angeles County
How long have you been employed by Los Angeles County in this capacity?
since 1980.
Could you please say the training that you had in order to become, in order to have your job?
Yes, as a deputy medical examiner, I'm a doctor of medicine, licensed to practice in California. However, I have advanced training in pathology, which is the scientific aspect of medicine, the laboratory aspect. And I specialize in the performance of autopsies to determine the cause and manner of death. And I've received 5 additional years of training in pathology and forensic pathology.
Andy, thanks so much for the super chat. Stumbles through front door, studio audience cheers emphatically. All in all caps, of course. Alrighty. Thank you, Andy. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'm board certified as a forensic pathologist.
So let me back up. You went to medical school?
Yes.
Where?
Went to the University of Illinois College of Medicine.
That was 4 years, correct?
Yes.
And then what did you do after those 4 years?
4 years of pathology residency
And where did you do your 4 years of pathology residency?
at the University of Illinois Hospital.
And then where did you go after that?
Then I had 2 years of military service in the medical corps as a pathologist.
And what branch of the military were you in, sir?
I was in the United States Air Force medical corps, so I was 2 years military service.
Okay, now that was after your 4 years of pathology residency, correct?
Yes,
And during the 2 years of your military service, did you perform autopsies?
yes.
Then after your 2 years of military, where did you next go?
Then I was in the practice of pathology, not forensic, just hospital pathology for several years. And then after that, I joined the coroner's office in 1980 as a forensic, as a deputy medical examiner.
Could you tell us what a forensic pathologist is and then describe the other kind of pathologists?
A forensic pathologist deals in those matters that come in contact with the law, and basically a forensic pathologist specializes in performance of autopsies to determine the cause and manner of death of deceased who fall under various categories that are not natural processes, accidents, suicides, etc.
Are there other kind of pathologists, in other words, people who perform pathology who aren't forensic pathologists?
Yes, the majority of pathologists are hospital pathologists.
And just briefly, what does a hospital pathologist do?
Hospital pathologist, basically the pathologist who runs the laboratory at hospitals and diagnoses biopsies, pap smears, and runs all the correction. He supervises all the laboratory aspects of the hospital. He also performs autopsies on hospital patients.
So some pathologists look at tissue from living people, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how many years did you work at this hospital before you joined the coroner's office?
From 72 onward.
So from 1972 until 1980, you were employed there, is that correct? Is that yes? All right.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Golden, how many autopsies in an average year do you perform?
At the coroner's office?
Yes.
350 to 400.
Woo, that's a lot of autopsies. And I wanted to kind of pause there and make a little bit of a comment, because I know that I did say his mannerisms are a little bit strange, right? They're a little bit off. And I know you folks are seeing it too in the chat. I will say, when I personally toured the coroner's office, one thing that struck me is that in order to just be there, it's not a natural place for your average person to be, right? Because it's like usually, you're just, for most people, you don't really want to be around death. That is a place where you are around death 24/7, basically. And so it takes a certain type of personality, a certain type of humor, a certain type of person to not only be able to withstand working in that environment, but then to also thrive in that kind of an environment. Yeah, I know you folks hear Holmes. He's meowing a little bit. So it, and it's not to knock anyone that works in that kind of a place, because we absolutely need people like Dr. Golden working in the coroner's office, working in the medical examiner's office. But they could be a little bit different, right? So, anyway, they absolutely provide a service that I am very thankful that I don't have to do. So, very thankful for the folks that work there. But it sometimes it means that you can have this kind of a person that he kind of strikes me as someone who I kind of would expect to be that quirky character on like a crime TV show, like the guy that works down in the basement and is like the coroner that examines all the bodies on CSI or something, right? Like to have that kind of person that's just like, yeah, I can deal with dead bodies. It's not a big deal. And whatever. Anyway. Okay. So, but that's basically that. Like he's a little quirky, right? He's a little bit different. Anyway, yeah, it's just a little bit different. Andy, his part-time gig, stand-up comic. No, no, but thanks for the super chat. Okay. All right, let's go on. And yeah, Holmes is what? You want to go out? You don't want to be with me for classic trials? I think he's telling me he wants to go out. I'm gonna start this testimony back up, and then I'll probably let Mr. Holmes out so he can run around elsewhere. Okay.
Would Los Angeles County be considered a busy coroner's office?
Oh, yes.
Prior to your beginning with the coroner's office in 1980, approximately how many other autopsies had you performed?
Well, definitely not as many as here. Would be in the several hundred. Nowhere near in all that time as, let's say, 1 year in Los Angeles.
Right, so that the years that you performed autopsies prior to 1980, you would have performed a few hundred in all those years. And then once you joined the LA County Coroner's Office, you performed on an average between 350 and 400 a year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you've been with the coroner's office almost, let's say 13 years, that's in excess of 5,000 autopsies.
Yes.
All right. On August the 23rd of 1989, at 9:30 in the morning, did you perform an autopsy upon the body of Jose Enrique Menendez?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Golden, during the course of your testimony, are you going to need to refer to your autopsy report in order to refresh your memory as to what you did?
Yes.
All right, and that's what you have in front of you, is that correct?
Yes.
And that autopsy report is an official record of Los Angeles County, is that correct?
Yes.
I take it you've testified before in other courtrooms?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have an independent recollection here today in court as to everything that you did regarding the two autopsies you're about to testify to?
No.
All right. Up on the board, Your Honor, is a diagram. There are two copies of them. I'd like that marked as People's 89. It's the male diagram, please.
Exhibit 89.
Thank you. Dr. Golden, in preparing your report of the autopsy of Mr. Menendez, did you list various shotgun wounds that you observed to his body?
Yes,
And did you give them numbers?
yes.
And by giving them numbers, did you in any way mean to indicate the sequence in which they were inflicted upon the victim?
No, absolutely not.
Are you able at this point to tell us which wounds occurred prior to which other wounds?
No.
And in regards to Mr. Menendez, how many individual wounds have you documented in your autopsy report?
I documented 6, but I documented 6, not implying
Sorry, I forgot that I muted myself. Thanks, guys. Okay, so where did I start off? Oh yes, I see it in the chat about him looking at his notes. He that it's kind of a strange thing. They may have stipulated ahead of time that he was not, or that he was allowed to look at his notes, or that he was allowed to look at the actual autopsy report itself. I'm not sure, but there was, before he started testifying, there was a long protracted argument between the two sides about, I don't know about argument, but I mean, yeah, it was oral argument, but that was about his testimony. So about the photos that they were going to be using, about a lot of other stuff. So, anyhow, so they may have discussed this ahead of time. Okay. Sorry about that. Now I should be back. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Why is my chat not showing up? Hang on. There we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry. That's my internet once again coming in to make things more interesting. Okay. Am I? Yeah, I guess I look a little bit less pixely than last time, right? All right, cool. Good. Finally. Okay, good. Happy about that. Okay. Well, so maybe that was just a little bit of a correction there. Well, I'll go with that. Okay. Well, what was I saying? Oh yeah, we were talking about the notes. Okay. Anyway, we're getting back into it, but we're also about to get into some photos. So we're going to be okay. I'm going to try to navigate this. Okay. All right, let's get back to it.
the number of separate shots involved.
Okay, so there is a distinction then between the wounds that you're going to describe and the shots inflicted. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right. So what you're going to tell us about then are 6 different areas of wounding in addition to some other findings that you made. Is that correct?
yes,
All right. And I believe that you indicated in your report the first wound that you documented was wound number 1 to the back of the head. Is that correct?
yes.
May I approach, please, Your Honor? Now, the photograph has been marked. It is Exhibit 78. Dr. Golden, I'd like to ask you to
Okay, yep.
recognize the wound which is depicted in photograph 78.
Yes,
And is that the wound that you refer to in your autopsy report as wound number 1?
yes.
Right. And could you describe for us what is depicted in this photograph and what that wound is, please?
Well, it shows the back of the head or scalp, which has been shaved by the coroner's photographer to show the shotgun entrance wound or hole on the back of the head.
Your Honor, this time I'm going to place a tag with the number 1 next to the wound, not on it, to depict that as wound number 1 for purposes of reference. And I'm also going to put a tag with a 1 on it on the diagram 89, Your Honor.
Yeah, and
That's
Andy,
the area.
I am censoring some of this because I don't want YouTube to punish me for these images. They are that
Dr.
bad.
Golden, from where you're seated, will you see this
So
photograph?
I'm gonna pull the
Yes.
camera back up when the image isn't up, and then when I pull it back down,
Well, first of all,
or,
as
so
an autopsy surgeon.
so, and it's not just a diagram. There's an
there's a
actual
difference between
image there.
Entrance wounds and exit wounds.
Okay, so they're pulling it away from there. So
That's part of the job. Yes,
And the wound which is depicted in the photograph on the board, which we are going to call wound number 1, is that an entrance wound or an exit wound?
no, that's an entrance wound.
All right. And could you tell us why that is an entrance wound?
Well, it has all the characteristic appearances of an entrance wound.
And what are the characteristic appearances of an entrance wound to the back of the head?
Well, if it's a so-called contact wound, that is the muzzle of the weapon, in this case the shotgun, is placed directly in contact with the body, in this case the scalp. And here this would mean the entire load.
What do you mean by the load?
Well, the load of the shotgun shell, that would include the pellets and any wadding material that's packed into the shell to separate the pellets, the individual pellets from the powder charge. So that was that entered the head, the inside of the head.
Debbie, they're
And I
both
recovered pellets along with the wadding.
All right. Now, when you talk about the wadding, are you referring?
there. So yeah, Cheryl, I'm directly in contact. This is why so Shireen had a good point earlier. She said that entrance wounds are neater than and smaller than exit wounds, but given that this is a shotgun and it was placed directly in contact, it's a very large wound. It's a very large wound. So yeah, I'll say that.
To a portion of the inside of the shotgun shell.
Yes,
And you recovered wadding from this wound, is that correct?
yes.
Now, is there anything about the tearing to the back of the scalp, which is depicted in the photograph on the board, which indicates to you that this is in fact an entrance wound?
Yes, two things. The scalp is torn, so those lines extending out from the hole indicate tearing of the scalp. That would be caused by the explosive charge, the gas coming out of the muzzle of the shotgun enters the scalp and then lifts the scalp up and tears it. So that's characteristic of an entrance wound.
And let me interrupt for a moment. Is that called something? Is there a word for that? For the tear, that pattern that you see on the back of the neck? Is the word stellate something used in your report to describe the tearing?
Yes.
So
Sorry. Just before they they scroll back to it.
I believe you've indicated then that this is in fact an entrance wound to the back of the head of the decedent. Is that correct?
Because
Yes.
they
And I
panned it back to
believe
the
in
photo.
describing it, you also said it was a contact wound. Could you tell us what a contact wound is?
Okay. Now we're
The
going back.
muzzle of the weapon, in this case the shotgun, is placed in contact with the body, in this case the scalp.
And when you say contact, are you talking of any distance between the end of the gun and the skin? Or are you talking about the gun being placed right up against the skin?
Well, in this case, it's placed against, it would be placed against the hair, which is pressed against the skin, but that's a contact wound.
And now, why do you say this is a contact wound?
Well, it has all the appearances, a large defect, these radiating tears, marked destruction of the bone inside the head. Plus, I found black deposit of soot on fragments of bone, which is characteristic of a contact wound.
Now, during the course of your testimony, I think you're going to be making reference to the term soot and also to the term stippling. Could you tell the jury what soot and stippling are?
Soot or smoke or powder gas is what comes out of the muzzle end of a gun or rifle when a shot is fired. That's the part of the charge that explodes and comes out of the muzzle end of the gun along with the bullet or the shotgun load. It's part of the small explosive process whenever a round is discharged. So that will come out of the muzzle end in addition to the bullet or charge. Stippling, gunpowder stippling, sometimes known as powder burns, refers to the small particles of gunpowder that come out of the muzzle end of the gun, also along with the bullet whenever a shot is fired.
Now, I believe you've indicated then that you saw soot inside of the head. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any soot outside?
No.
Okay. Now, why? What does that mean to you?
Then, if there's a tight contact or seal between the muzzle end of the gun and the body, then there won't be soot on the outside. It will enter inside. If the muzzle is off by a small distance or several inches, then the soot will make a ring or a ring or a circle around the outside of the hole. That would make it a close range wound.
Okay, so if the soot is inside of the wound, then that would lead you to believe that it was a contact wound, and if it's outside the wound, that would lead you to believe that the muzzle was some distance from the wound. Is that correct?
Yes, roughly. If it's only on the inside without being on the outside, then it would be a contact wound. If it's outside only, it would be close range. If it's outside and inside, it could be very close, near contact.
Now, we're using terms in your testimony like close and very close without being precise and using inches and feet. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, there is.
What is the reason?
The only way to get an exact distance or range of fire, particularly with a shotgun, is to fire the actual weapon with the ammunition that was used. That's the only way a ballistics or firearms specialist can tell you the exact distance. There are too many variables in load, length of barrel, charge, ammunition used, to be precise. A forensic pathologist can classify them only in range approximations, contact, close, or distant.
All right, so when you're talking about close, well, contact, I think you've described. Close, what are you referring to? Inches, feet? Just, can you give us a range?
In a shotgun wound, close is meant to imply that the shot pellets are in one tight group and enter the body in one tight cluster. They haven't separated yet. That's generally what can be meant as close. There hasn't been any spread of the pellets, so that's variable. It depends on the barrel length and the ammunition used. When it gets distance, the pellet starts separating, and again, that could be variable. Normally, with the usual barrel length shotgun, it's taken to be from 5 or 6 feet. The pellet starts spreading out and giving an individual pattern. And with the sawed-off shotgun, it'll be closer. It could be 3 to 4 feet. So that's generally what we mean by close. One hole entering, one volley of shot, tight cluster entering, producing just one defect.
Now, referring back to this wound, which we're calling number 1, I believe you indicated you recovered some wadding and you also recovered some pellets. Do you remember approximately how many pellets you recovered?
Yes, 12.
And did you find anything that you associated with exit wounds in regards to this wound number 1?
I found 2 small tears compatible with exit wound, meaning where pellet or pellets may have exited or left the body.
And where did you find those tears, please?
One was on the right ear. Another was on the right temple.
I'm going to refer now to the diagram, which is 89. The second paper that appears to be assigned to you, and I believe you indicated in your testimony that there were
Don't want to show it.
wounds. I think you said right here.
I'll show the diagram.
Come and make
If
two
it- dang it.
dots.
Picture's right next to the diagram. There we go.
And then I'll reproduce
Now
them
we can
together.
show. Oh,
Two dots on this
a
dot.
little too much. Ugh.
Your Honor, I will try to reproduce that as accurately as possible.
So you can briefly see, you put a dot there next to the head or on the head. Okay. Now okay. Now they're past the photo.
Now, with this particular wound, would you have expected to find more exits?
No.
Okay, why?
Well, many times a contact wound of the head does not produce many individual exit wounds. Many times there's a large defect, and a lot of the pellets may just exit through one large defect, or I guess you could say hole in the skull.
Does the presence of the skull hold in any of the pellets?
Yes, many times it does, yes.
Now, do you have an opinion as to how this wound number 1 contributed to the death of Mr. Menendez?
Well,
What is your opinion about this specific wound?
well, it's a fatal wound with massive injury to the skull and brain.
Now, would this wound have been classified as an immediately fatal wound?
It appears to be immediately or a rapidly fatal wound, yes. There is no way a forensic pathologist can tell you exactly how long
Debbie, I agree.
survival is, only in a few instances only.
Well, in terms of immediately fatal, if that were your diagnosis, and that's what you're saying. Is
Or a rapidly fatal wound.
Well, how long would it take before the heart would stop pumping? Would it be less than 30 seconds, less than a minute? Or do you,
Again, that's something that I can't unequivocally tell you, because there are always cases of remarkable or unusual survival with very severe wounds that can't be, that can't always be accounted for. And I mean, we have evidence of that in many cases or reports. So there's no unequivocal way of saying exactly how long that would take.
if a person had sustained a wound like that, they would not be able to move after that wound. Is that correct?
Yeah, it appeared by all appearances, with the multiple skull fractures and the brain injury, yes, it appears to be a by all accounts, a rapidly fatal wound.
Moving now to what you've described as wound number 2, all right, in your report. Could you refer to that part of your report, please?
Yes?
Okay, could you please describe for us, and may I approach again, please, Your Honor, where wound number 2 was?
Well, the wound number 2 group was on the upper arm and the right forearm.
Now, referring to diagram 89.
Nope.
Could you tell me, well, is it better to use the back view or the front view to illustrate wound number 2?
Okay.
With these dots that I'm going to use.
The front view.
All right, and wound number 2, what you referred to now, could you describe it for us in words?
Well, wound number 2 is what I've already classified as a distance shot. There was no single hole or entrance. It's a number of individual pellet defects.
And
Six on the 6 in number on the upper part of the right arm, above the elbow region, and that is a distance shot, characterized as a distance shotgun wound.
All right, would you please come to the diagram 89 and show us on the diagram where wound number 2 was? Now, you drew diagrams of each of the wounds, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, is that part of what you're referring to in formulating Exhibit 89?
Yes.
Could you show us on this diagram where wound number 2 is? Just point it at, I'm not having to illustrate it. All right, now, where wound number 2 is both above and below, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna put 2 stickers, one above and one below. That's wound number 2. And could you please tell me where the wound entered? In other words, did it enter the front of the arm or the back of the arm?
Well, it would be the front. What I would refer to anatomically as anterior, but I guess it could be considered the front of the arm,
All right,
in
so,
front of the elbow region.
all right, so anterior then means like the front of my arm where I would bend it, and what do you call the back of my arm?
That's the posterior is anatomically what's referred to as the back of the arm.
All right, so the wound number 2, then the entrance was to the front of the arm? Is
Yes.
that correct? And the exit would have been to the back of the arm, is that correct?
I don't believe I've described any exit wounds with this one. I recovered some pellets and no wadding.
And do you remember about how many pellets you recovered from wound number 2?
Yes, all I was able to recover were 2 pellets from the wound path in this case.
Did you find any soot deposit affiliated with wound number 2?
No, this was a distant shot or a distant type of shotgun wound.
And I believe you indicated there were 6 individual defects, indicating that there were 6 individual little holes, which would relate to 6 little pellets. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
And so, yeah, so just to interject here, yeah, I see folks in the chat saying this is, they're what the prosecution is trying to get at here is that he is that the guys did this, in premeditated fashion, right? You show that this is all close range, means that it was basically an execution, not self-defense, or this expanded sort of self-defense that was argued by the defense. Also, I think it shows not just that, but also the number of times that they shot each of them, because right now we're talking about the second wound. There's several wounds per person that they get into. So the first one was back of the head. This one is like this part of the arm when they got shot. So it's like those two are not from the same wound, right? Because this one was from close up. Then there's some other wound on the back of the arm. So, there's and then there's going to be more that we're about to get into. But I think that also shows, it's pretty clear that wound, the one in the back of the head, is going to be one that's going to cause a fatality. It kind of shows that these guys they kind of look a little bit like as if they had some sort of a lust for violence. That's the impression that the prosecution is trying to give, I think, here. So to show that it wasn't just self-defense, because self-defense would usually, for a jury to be convinced of self-defense, you want them to have a sense that there was some amount of restraint, right? Because they were only doing what they needed to do in order to get out of whatever danger they were in. But yeah, so I think what you guys are saying is correct for sure, that, having that be close range makes it seem like they were the aggressors in this situation, but also the number of times that they shot each of them is also, I think, an indication, at least what the prosecution is trying to present to the jury, what they're trying to convince the jury is that these guys went above and beyond what could have been foreseeably any form of self-defense.
What was your opinion as to what kind of damage this wound did to the decedent? Would that wound have caused him to die if it was the only wound?
No.
Would it have incapacitated him?
Actually, it didn't strike bone. It appears. Correction. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't reading farther down. This wound did cause a fracture of the upper part of the right arm, the right humerus. So in that instance, it would be an incapacitating wound because of the complete fracture of the right arm or right humerus.
So, Kit Kat, I know your question. What was the order in which they shot them in these various places? They did say at the beginning, or he did say at the beginning of his testimony, that you can't tell, or he couldn't tell based off of his examination, what would have been done first. So which injury would have happened first, second, third, fourth. However, I think that what they're about to get into is to go through each one. Like, obviously that one, the one on the head, was basically a fatal injury. Then, each other one, I think that they're going to go into them and say, is this the kind of one that would have incapacitated them? Would this have incapacitated them? Because if that's the case, then that it would have been the case that that person would have been incapacitated, therefore no longer a danger to Lyle and Erik in that moment, right? Because in order for in order for self-defense to be proper, you have to use basically no more force than what's necessary to defend yourself or to defend another person, whatever the situation is. So, yeah, this is pretty, so far, this is pretty bad for the brothers. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the final witness for the prosecution. If I'm the prosecution, this probably would be my last witness, because this is one hell of a way to leave the jury with an impression from your case in chief. Anyway, okay, so yeah, let's continue on with that. Okay, Holmes, what? Come here, come hang out. What? Get over here. Come hang out with everybody. They all want to see you. Okay.
And moving on then to wound number 3, could you please describe for us verbally, and then we'll go to the chart, what wound number 3 is, please?
Well, that group was on the right upper arm, but on the back, actually, it's on the precisely, it's on the back of the right forearm.
All right, by the forearm, do you mean below the elbow?
Yes.
All right, and that's wound number 3, and I'm going to put it on the back portion of this diagram 89. And I'm also going to show you a photograph, and I'd like to ask you if in the photograph you can identify wound number 3 for us.
Yes.
Okay, where is wound number 3?
It's on the back of the right forearm.
Okay, is that here, Dr. Golden?
Yes.
All
Can I
right.
see what you're pointing to?
Yes, I'm sorry, right here. I'm going to put a number 3 next to it.
Thank you.
What exhibit?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. This is
This
exhibit
one's not as
75.
bad as the first one,
And
but
I'll
there's
put it
still a lot of
above the
blood.
wound.
And I know we've seen some gruesome stuff, but this is the one that I was like, maybe I can show this one, but there's still a lot of there's still a lot. It's better honestly, it's better to play it safe.
So I believe then it's your testimony that when you say the wound is to the back of the forearm, does that mean that the entry is to the back of the arm?
That,
It's basically like right here on the arm.
Yes.
now, I believe that you indicated when I asked you about wound number 2 that you use terms like anterior and posterior. Is one of the reasons you use those terms versus back and front because you don't know what position the arm was in when it was shot? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. For our purposes of having not been to medical school, then wound number 3 was to the back of this arm. Is that correct?
Yes.
But it in no way means to indicate that the arm was in any particular position, except that the bullets entered through the back of the arm. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did you also describe a wound as wound number 4?
Yes.
And what is wound number 4, please?
These were shotgun pellet wounds. Again, distant type of wound of the left elbow with recovery of multiple lead pellets.
I believe you indicated in your report that there were 9 individual pellet wounds in the area of the left elbow, of which 5 you recovered.
Yes.
And were you able to determine where the entry was? In other words, was the entry to the back of the arm, the back of the elbow?
The elbow, by definition, is the back.
All right. Well, is there a medical term for this?
That's the antecubital fossa that you're pointing to.
Okay, so it's the inside of my elbow, right?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
And wound number 4, I believe you've indicated would have been here on the left elbow. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have that, Mr. Chairman?
They're showing the diagram primarily, but now
This
they
wound
have
number
the
4 to the back of the elbow.
photo,
Do you
it's, like,
have
right
whether or
next
not
to
that
it.
would have been fatal?
Ordinarily, this is not a fatal wound. It did not strike any vital organs or structures.
Moving ahead now to wound number 5. Could you please describe verbally for us wound number 5?
That was a wound of the left thigh without recovery of any projectiles.
Now, where did the wound enter and where did it exit? Where was the
It
entry?
was located on the lower left thigh, sort of on the inside of the lower left thigh.
Your Honor, I'm going to place a 5 then next to the inside of the left thigh on this diagram 89. And I have a photograph here, which is Exhibit 77. I'd like to ask you if this depicts the wound that we've been talking about, wound number 5.
Here we go.
Yes.
Can show
And I'm
this.
going to mark the photograph with a 5 placed just on the photograph near the wound. This wound number 5, I believe that you.
Yeah, this one I'm
indicated
definitely
that
not showing.
The entry was on.
Also, because it shows
inside
some
what we
nudity. Because
would
it's
call the inside of the thigh. and
a
the
cadaver
entry
on a
was the
table.
outside portion of the thigh. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And could you give me some more detail about this wound, please?
so this is wound number 3 that they're talking about now.
This wound had a single large hole or defect, but it appeared that there was beginning separation of the shot, because I saw 2 what we call satellite pellet defects. Satellite meaning separate holes away from the main hole. That indicates it's beginning separation. So again, I can't give you the precise distance. It would depend on the shotgun barrel length and the shotgun shell used. Normally, with the usual shotgun that's not sawed off, separation begins at around 5 or 6 feet. That's the estimate. Somewhere in that vicinity, but there's no way of telling exactly. So this is, it's obviously not, it's not a contact or a close range wound. It's beginning separation. So it may be, if my conditions are satisfied, the usual type of barrel length, be somewhere between 5 or 6 feet.
Now, did you notice any satellite defects in relationship to the entry wound?
Yes,
I believe your report indicated 2?
yes,
And that the satellite means that some of the pellets have strayed from the central core and make individual entry. Is that correct?
yes.
Were you able to recover any of the pellets from this wound, number 5?
No, it appears to have gone through the leg and exited on the outside of the thigh, opposite the entrance wound. I didn't recover anything on that.
Ooh, so it went right through.
And in addition to your opinion that this was a distance wound, then there was no soot or stippling. Is that correct? As to this wound?
That's correct.
And what did this wound do to the leg? What kind of damage did it do?
May I approach, Your Honor? I think I put the dot number 5 on Exhibit 89.
Yeah,
Well,
that would have incapacitated him if it went through his leg.
Could you please tell us what damage it did?
it caused a complete fracture of the left femur or thigh bone, and it was completely separated. The bone ends were separated, so it was completely mobile.
Would that cause a person to become incapacitated?
Yes,
So you wouldn't be able to walk on that leg, is that correct?
yes.
Would that wound have been fatal if there had been no other wounds?
Now they're going back.
I wouldn't say it's an immediately fatal wound. It's just incapacitating.
In addition to the wounds that we've described, did you also find any kind of abrasion to the chest of Mr. Menendez?
Yes,
Right, and I think for our purposes, we're going to refer this to this as number 6. Could you describe for us what kind of abrasions you found to the chest of Mr. Menendez?
Well, on the front of the chest,
Yeah, I see folks asking about like why all these different shots to the arms and legs and all this kind of stuff. I would imagine that if you ask the prosecution, they would say because they just were intent on doing anything to harm their parents in all kinds of different ways. If you ask the defense, it would probably be they were afraid, they didn't know how to use these. This is their first time, maybe first time using a shotgun. If any of you have ever shot a shotgun, it's a very powerful and loud and can be an intimidating firearm to shoot. You can easily get a bruise from the recoil if you don't hold your shoulder properly when you actually do shoot it. There's a very strong recoil from it. So if they're not familiar with firearms going into an incident like this, they would be probably a little bit intimidated by these things, and maybe after the first time that they shoot it, I mean, who knows what kind of accuracy they would even have, but then also after they shoot once, maybe adrenaline, all kinds of things could have happened. So yeah.
chest to the right of the midline or sternum or breastbone, there were a number of abrasions or scratches.
Right. Your Honor, for the record, I'm going to place a number 6 on 89 in the area that's just been described, in the general area that's just been described. And I have here a photograph which has been marked as 76. I'm also going to place a red dot next to a ruler that's on this.
So you've got the red dot on the
photograph
chest.
76. Dr. Golden showing you.
They're going to
photograph
show the
76.
chest,
Is
some
that
road
depict
rash.
the injuries
That one
you
I can
described, which
show.
We're going to refer to as number 6.
Yes.
Placing this now on the board. Dr. Golden, could you tell us what this is, please?
The entire photo?
Yes, what are these injuries depicted in the photograph?
So this we can.
Well, there, as you said, there are multiple
I was
abrasions
just waiting until
or
they took down the other photo.
rubs of the skin, and there's also one pellet defect also on the photograph.
Now, could you, for those who didn't go to medical school, could you tell us what an abrasion is? What is your definition of an abrasion?
Abrasion is a blunt injury caused by scraping of the skin on a rough surface. What would ordinarily be called a scratch or a rub or a burn, where the skin is broken but not the deeper tissues.
All right, so that would be like skinning your knee or something would be an abrasion?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you indicated that there was a pellet defect contained within this area called number 6.
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell in which direction the pellet was traveling?
Well, it just, this was a superficial pellet wound. It went into the skin and struck the sternum or breastbone. So,
Can you see it in the photograph, that individual pellet wound you've described?
I believe so. It's sort of dark.
Okay, could you maybe come here? I'll bring this other photograph and circle it, please. Could you circle that for me? Do you see it in the photograph? And could you also circle it on this photograph too? Thank you. What caused this? Can you tell what caused wound number 6?
Well, I know it caused the shotgun pellet wound because it was recovered. from the bone.
As far as the other reddish portion of this, what was-
Yeah, you want to know about the abrasions?
Yes, could you tell us about the abrasion, please?
They're probably related to the shotgun wound.
And which shotgun wound are you referring to?
Probably the one of the right arm, the right arm and forearm, which we discussed earlier.
Was that wound number 2?
Yes.
And in that photograph, it appears that there is some area that is not abraded. I'm sorry, Mr. Roberts, what was your question?
I can't see where he circled that.
Oh, okay, well,
All right, so perhaps you can do it again. It's darker.
in the photograph, I've now marked it with a thicker black pen. Dr. Golden, in this
What
photograph.
exhibit is that for?
I'm sorry, I think it's 76. I'll just change it. Yes, it's 76. Dr. Golden, in exhibit 76, there appears to be portions that are, I guess, striped, or I don't know if there's a medical term, but you see here right next to the circle, there's an area here that's white. Can you explain what would cause that to be white and the other portions one here red?
Well, the white area is normal skin that's not abraded or scraped.
All right, so that skin was not then exposed to whatever abraded the other skin. Would that be correct?
Yes.
The expression on his face looked almost like he was like offended by having to explain that. Which I mean I get it. It's kind of an obvious question and an obvious answer. But it's like you kind of have to say that in order to point it out sometimes. But anyway.
Yes.
In addition to the 6 wounds that we've discussed, did you find anything on the right lower thigh of Mr. Menendez? I believe you need to refer back to the beginning of your report for that.
Yes, I referred to minor abrasions on the right lower thigh.
And I believe you described it in your report as being annular. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, what is that in English?
round.
And what can you tell us more specifically about these abrasions on the right lower thigh?
Not much.
Were you able to tell if these
They were nondescript, and I didn't see any particular pattern. All I can say is that in shotgun wounds, particularly distant wounds, there are abrasions caused by wad marks. That is when the wadding, whether it's felt or cardboard or plastic, strikes the skin but doesn't embed in the skin. And in shotgun wounds, particularly distant wounds, very often there are wad marks or wad abrasions, which just indicate that it's a distant shot, and the wad strikes the skin, causing the mark. So that's not uncommon in shotgun wounding to have additional abrasions, not pellet wounds.
but abrasions similar in color then to what is exhibited in photograph 76?
Yes, many times, yes.
Now, I'm going to put just a red dot that's unnumbered here on the right side to indicate that separate area.
Let me just make
because
sure.
That is also the last area we'll be discussing.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Were you
This
able
is the
to tell
diagram.
the age
She was
of
showing.
these abrasions, how long they've been there?
I wasn't sure if she was adding another
All I
photo,
can
but I
say is
missed.
they appear to be recent, all of the same all of the same age.
And by the same age, are you talking about the same age as the other injuries that you've already described in your testimony?
Yes,
Now, after examining Mr. Menendez, are you, as part of your job, to determine the cause of death as to an individual? Is that
yes.
what- Okay, and what are your choices as a coroner? What are the things that you can say about the cause of death?
I'm not sure about.
Well, can you say it's suicide?
Well, that's the mode.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. As to cause of death, what was the cause of death as to Mr. Menendez?
Well, the cause of death was multiple shotgun wounds.
And wound number one, the one to the head, is the one that would have been immediately, or you used another word, fatal. Rapidly fatal.
Yes.
And the mode of death, which is what I was referring to. You have choices as to mode of death as a coroner, is that correct?
Yes.
And what are your choices?
Homicide, accident, suicide, natural, or undetermined.
And what was your determination as to Mr. Menendez as to the mode of death?
Homicide.
It was definitely
Have a moment,
cancer.
please, to check my notes, Your Honor. So as to Mr. Menendez, there was one contact wound, which was to the back of the head. Is that correct?
Yes.
In addition, do you cause tissue and blood samples to be taken from the decedents in order to determine if there was any kind of drugs or alcohol present?
Yes.
And as regards Mr. Menendez, did he in fact have any kind of alcohol present at the time that his blood or tissue was tested?
Yes. Yes.
And what was the blood alcohol?
Decimal point 0.04%.
Now, 0.04, well, you're aware of the drunk driving laws say that a person is legally drunk at 0.08. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this is half of what that is. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in determining blood alcohol readings, is it fair to say that you can't determine if the person you can't determine at what time the person drank the alcohol based upon the reading. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is time of death. I know sometimes people ask you about time of death. Can you?
Whoa, that was a little bit of a that exhale and that like look over to the side of like rolling his eyes like about time of death. Weird. He's definitely starting to come across as like a little like he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and he may very well be, because you know he's the guy that did the autopsy here, right? He's the doctor in the room. But whatever. I don't know if it really matters to the jury, because this is very sort of technical information that they're getting from him. But you know, his ability to be likable to the jury is a bit limited in this line of questioning, I would say.
Can you tell us how precise you can be in terms of these particular autopsies as to time of death?
Not very precise.
What are some of the factors that contribute to how you determine time of death?
Well, the internal body temperature is taken in these. The coroner's office takes the liver temperature. That's the internal body temperature to see determine possible rate of cooling of the body, and the degree of stiffening or rigor mortis are used by medical examiners to try to give an estimate or range.
Fair point, Aaron.
Is the temperature in which the body is found at, that is the ambient air temperature, is that a factor in determining how fast the body cools?
Yes, there are many factors, and that's why it's imprecise.
Are you able, in this particular case, as to Mr. Menendez, to give us with any precision the time of death?
No, especially in this case, there was a long delay in the coroner's investigation, not the police, the coroner's investigator taking the body temperature. So the estimates would be too imprecise for our purposes.
Referring now to the autopsy you performed on Mary Louise Menendez. Again, on August the 23rd of 1989, did you perform an autopsy on a woman, Mary Louise Menendez?
Yes,
And I believe in your report you indicated that you had identified 10 separate areas of wounding. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay. And again, as with Mr. Menendez, the order of the numbering is not your opinion on the order in which the wounds was inflicted. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Now, referring to Mrs. Menendez, starting with wound number 1, could you describe for us where wound number 1 was located, please?
Shotgun wound number 1 of the head particularly was on the left cheek.
So now we're talking about Kitty Menendez.
What can you tell us about this wound, please?
It was a contact wound with soot or smoke deposit in the deeper tissues on the pathway. And I did recover some plastic wadding in this case.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have here another diagram. I'd like to mark it, please, as Exhibit 90.
Oh, for sure.
So now we're getting her diagram up, and then we're going to see. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to show any of
Golden,
these
I'm going to
photos
show you a photograph
because they're
of this
pretty
mark.
gruesome too.
Is photograph 85. Photograph 85, can you see wound number 1 in this photograph?
Yes,
And I believe you described it to being as being to the left cheek, is that correct?
yes,
Could you point at that for me, please? All right, Your Honor, he's identified a wound to the left cheek. I will mark this with a green dot as wound number 1, and I'll place it next to the wound.
So the reason I'm censoring it, I see it in the chat questioning why am I censoring it, because YouTube also
Now, I believe you indicated
will
that was
treat
contact wound
a channel like
and,
mine differently than they will
inside the wound.
treat
You
law and
said
crime.
outside the wound.
no, I did not.
So there's that too.
I believe you indicated you recovered some
Just
pellets,
because they're
is
showing
that
it there
correct?
doesn't necessarily mean
recovered-
that YouTube is going to treat
That's
me
why
the same way.
I didn't the first time. There were
I would much rather err on the
birdshot
side of
pellets
caution.
and a plastic wadding.
And now, are birdshot pellets different in size from the other kind of pellets that you recovered from Mr. Menendez?
To my naked eye examination, yes, birdshot are the smallest type of pellets you can recover.
Do you have an opinion as to what kind of damage this wound number 1 would have done?
Well, there were extensive fractures of the jaw, and well, there were multiple fractures of the skull associated with this, along with the problem that there were other gunshot wounds to the head. So when they intersect like this, it's impossible to say exactly what caused, which wound caused which fracture, because their pathways are too close together. The one I'm going to describe subsequently too is also into the head on the other side.
So also, even just these descriptions are enough to get this video demonetized. So, you know, I am the reason why I'm not showing the photos is because like I don't like, they are bad enough that I would worry about this channel getting struck because of it. Like it's yeah. And maybe I'm being overly cautious, but that's just the way that I prefer to run this. It's just not worth the risk, in my opinion. And on that note, about Holmes is saying hi, of course. About the demonetization, like this live stream almost definitely is going to be demonetized if it's not already. I always dispute it to get manual review, but you know, I sometimes they do say, hey, this is like, you know, like mature enough that, you know, we don't want to that we're not gonna really monetize this one, and we're not gonna really allow you to monetize this one. And it's really just because advertisers don't necessarily want to be associated with things that are particularly gruesome or sensitive or what have you. So but that's why I'm so grateful for all the folks that are in Bite Club, because and to everyone who is not a member of Bite Club that can't do it, you know, no worries, absolutely no worries, no shade to anyone who, you know, who's managing their finances elsewhere. But just want to say I'm very thankful to the folks that are and that are part of Bite Club, whether you are a member on YouTube memberships or you're a supporter on Locals or Patreon. You guys really do help to allow me to decide, you know what, despite the fact that this is probably going to be demonetized, let's go ahead with it, you know, anyway. And, you know, whatever, it's fine. It's not going to be a big deal. So, okay. Anyway, so yes, thank you. Thank you for that, for all of you. And if anybody else is interested, there's a link in the description below to sign up if you would like, on any of those platforms. Okay.
All right, let's get on then to the next wound, which is wound number 2 in your report. Where was wound number 2, please? As for the record, I'm going to put a 1 up next to the left cheek on diagram 19. I'm going to move this one over so it doesn't obstruct all the others. Where was wound number 2?
The one I grouped as wound number 2 involved the right cheek, the eye, the nose, and the nose, and a portion of the left cheek.
Could you please leave the witness stand and just point out to us what grouping you're talking about as wound number 2 in this photograph?
Oh, shoot. Sorry. Dang it.
I'm referring to this cluster here.
All right. And
The forehead, the eye region, the nose.
So he's pointing at her,
including the upper lip, I think. Is that
her
correct?
right eye.
Your Honor, I'm going to put a signature on this one on both the diagram and the photograph, which is exhibit 85. Now, the kind of shot or the kind of pellets that we used in wound number 2, was that different from the kind of shot from wound number 1?
They were larger than the ones in wound number 1. Wound number 1 I described as the tiny ones, birdshot. These appeared to be larger.
Did you recover any pellets from this wound?
Yes.
Do you know exactly how many pellets you recovered?
No, just as best as I can do a representative sample.
And did you notice, how many individual pellet wound defects did you notice as to wound number 2?
Approximately 10.
And do you have an opinion as to what kind of damage this would have done? In other words, would it have been fatal? Would this have been survivable?
This produced multiple fractures of the face and probably of the skull. Again, it appeared to intersect the shotgun wound that I described just before this, number 1. They're both going and meeting in the same area. One is the left side, the other is the right side. They appear to be meeting, so it's impossible to tell which one caused which fractures. But ordinarily, this would be considered a fatal wound causing damage to the skull and face.
Moving now to wound number 3 in your report. Could you describe for us where wound number 3 was located?
This one involved the head, the right side of the jaw, and the right clavicle or collarbone. And I've already indicated that it's in proximity to wound number 2, so it's not unequivocal that it's separate. As a matter of fact, it could be related or the same shot as number
Aaron,
2.
that's a really good point.
All right, so I have here another photograph, which is photograph 86. And I believe when you're talking about the clavicle, do you mean the collarbone right here? Is that
Yes.
correct? All right, photograph 86, I'm going to mark next to the clavicle with a green tag number 3.
Oh.
Now,
Next to
in
right
addition to
here.
the damage to the collarbone, there's damage to the lower jaw.
Okay, this one
this
I'm
photograph.
definitely not going to show. This was bad, really bad.
Is that damage to the lower right jaw, in your opinion,
We've
affiliated
got
with the wound to the collarbone?
a big gaping.
It
wound.
may be if with the tilting of the head to the right,
then they've got more-
it may be related.
Looks like
And
some
I'm
kind
also
of
gonna place a tag number 3
extra
down
heat
in
damage.
the collarbone area of this diagram number 90.
So this is
Did you
The
see
diagram.
the stippling after this wound, which we're going to call wound number 3?
No, these are. This is classified as a distant shot, individual pellet defects. So it's classified in the distant range, and there is no soot or smoke or gunpowder associated with these wounds.
How many individual pellet wounds did you note as they pertain to wound number 3?
Approximately 10.
Did you also recover some of the projectiles, some of the little pellets?
Yes.
Do you know about how many you recovered?
No, they were lead pellets, again, similar to those in 2, larger than birdshot, and I took a representative sample and submitted it as evidence.
Now we're going to move to wound number 4. Could you describe for us where wound number 4 was located?
One I called wound number 4 is on the left
Hey,
side
Shireen.
of the head
Welcome back
and
to Bike
left
Club.
ear, going to the back of the neck. And on this wound was associated with birdshot. In other words, the tiny pellets that I described for shotgun wound number 1. And this again was a distant shot, multiple individual pellet defects indicating spread. So this is in the distant range, but with the birdshot.
So then you described 2 birdshot wounds. One was to the left cheek and one was to the left, near the left ear. Is that correct?
Yes.
And here in photograph 85, which already has 2 dots on it, you can see on the left cheek some blood and also some darkness. Is this the wound that you're talking about, which is wound number 4?
No. Wound number 4 is
showing-
behind the left ear.
All right.
Oh.
We don't have a photograph of that here. Let me continue on and ask you some more questions. There's damage to the left shoulder shown in this photograph. This number I've forgotten. In photograph 86, there's damage to the left shoulder. Could you tell me if the damage to the left shoulder was affiliated with this wound, which you're calling number 4, which was behind the left ear? You need a moment to go through your report.
Yes, I do.
While he's doing that, Your Honor, may we approach with the recorder, please?
Yes.
Dr. Golden, the injury to the left shoulder, which is shown in photograph 86, was that affiliated with the injury to the left ear?
It appears entirely consistent with it. It was a distance shot with birdshot pellets recovered, and by appropriate, I guess I could say, manipulation of the left shoulder or tilting of the head, it could be one shotgun blast, not two.
So your testimony then is that the injury to the left ear and the shoulder both contain birdshot, is that correct?
Yes,
And that the injury to the left shoulder is reasonably affiliated with the injury to the ear, is that correct?
reasonably, or it's consistent.
So that would have been,
They're close to one another, yes.
and that was from a distance as opposed to the contact wound on the left cheek, is that correct?
Yes, this was a distant shot striking two different areas, the left shoulder and the left side of the head.
Do you have an opinion as to wound number 4? In other words, would that have been immediately fatal?
Not ordinarily, no. It did not go into the head. It was basically into the skin and soft tissue, and ordinarily this is not be considered an immediately fatal wound.
And let's
So you're talking about
continue
the one
on now
that's
to
behind the
wound
ear.
number 5. Could you describe to me where wound number 5 is located?
This, what I call number 5 is on the right upper arm.
In addition, is there another wound to the forearm that you've classified in this group of wounds as number 5?
Yeah, oh, yes, okay. The one I classified number 5 consisted of two groups or clusters, one on the right upper arm front and one on the forearm.
In the photograph, which is photograph 85, then are you talking about the wound to the right forearm and the right, near the right shoulder here?
Yes,
Arm is bent. Now, did you bend this arm for purposes of demonstration in the photograph?
yes,
Right, Your Honor, I'm gonna put a tag
It's
number
just showing
5
like right here,
right here in the crook of the arm to demonstrate
and then
this
in the
grouping. And
crook
also
of the
put
arm.
it on diagram 90 as well, near the elbow, or the inside of the elbow. So was it your opinion then that these two wounds on these two separate parts of her body are most likely affiliated with one shotgun blast?
most likely if the arm is bent in the appropriate way, it appears or is entirely consistent with being caused by one shotgun wound.
Now, did you recover or did you notice any pellets as to this particular injury, wound number 5?
I did recover multiple lead pellets and submitted them as evidence. No wadding.
And were the pellets consistent with the birdshot, or were they larger than birdshot?
Well, I described them as pellets, not birdshot. So
So they were of the larger variety, is that correct?
yes, yes, that's correct.
And what was your opinion as to whether or not this wound would have been fatal, wound number 5?
Non-fatal, fracture of the bones of the right arm. It would be considered an incapacitating wound, but not immediately fatal wound.
Now, going on to wound number 6, would you describe for us what wound number 6 is, please?
The shotgun wound of the
Sixth
left side
wound.
of the chest.
Did you notice individual pellet entry wounds?
Yeah.
To this?
Yes, this is again a so-called distant shot with multiple individual pellet wounds. I counted 16 over the left side of the chest and the left breast region. Again, classified as a distant shotgun wound.
I have here a photograph here on photograph 80, which has been marked. I'd like to show it to the witnesses. Does this photograph show the left side of Mrs. Menendez's body before you began your autopsy?
Yes,
And the wound that you've described, in which we're calling wound number 6, is that depicted here in this photograph?
yes,
Okay. To the left breast, there appear to be a number of pellet wounds. In addition, to the left forearm, there appears to be a number of pellet wounds. Is that correct?
yes,
All right. In your opinion, would the wounds to the left forearm be consistent with the wounds to the left breast? And that it's consistent in terms of one shot?
it's possible, yes.
Placing this on the board.
Yeah.
I'm going to place a sticker
Uh,
again next to
also
this
a
wound,
totally
sticker
nude
number
photo.
6.
So multiple reasons why I can get in trouble with this photo.
Photograph the crook of the left arm, and also on the diagram exhibit 90, place this next to the left breast of wound 6. Now, I believe you've indicated then that this was a distance wound. Is that correct?
Yes,
And one of the reasons is because you can see individual pellet holes, meaning that the shotgun load had already started to spread when it hit the decedent.
yes.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not this particular wound would have been fatal?
Well, in this wound, there was entrance into the rib cage and into the chest, and I did find blood in the chest, and there were individual pellet wounds of the left lung causing bleeding into the chest. So this would be considered a fatal wound because of perforation of the left lung and bleeding into the left side of the chest.
I take it then with this wound number 6, you didn't see any sort of stippling associated with a closer wound. Is that correct?
No, it's no sort of sibling. It's a distant range wound.
Your Honor, would this be an appropriate time to break?
All right, we'll take our noon recess. We'll resume at 1:30. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 1:30.
Okay, so we are going to save the rest of it for next week. Yeah, so next week we will resume with Dr. Irwin Golden. But yeah, I mean, so far this testimony seems not good for the brothers, right? There are 4 shotgun wounds to dad. So far, 6 shotgun wounds to mom. They're very gruesome, right? Like I am censoring this because of YouTube's terms of service. I don't want to have any repercussions for this channel. But the jury got to see absolutely everything. They had these images put up there. You guys can look them up if you want to see them. If you want to see them elsewhere, absolutely feel free to do that. Because it is, in order to get a good understanding of the case, to see what these wounds look like, that can have an impact on how you feel about what the Menendez brothers did. So, whether it was self-defense, whether it was murder. Anyway, so that's that. So that's why I hate the fact that I feel like I have to block these images, but where I have the ability to do so, I've got to play by YouTube's rules, right? Let me get some questions here before we head out, because I was collecting some while we were going. I probably should have addressed these a little earlier, but Malachi Washington said, when you're put on the stand, do they do anything to make sure you understand everything and tell the truth to the best you can? Or do they just put you up there and hope for the best? Every single trial that I've been part of, right? Like I've said before, I've never actually been the lawyer trying the case, but I have been part of some trials, and I have been in one case where I was going to be second chair, and we almost went to trial. I got everything. I got all the boxes into the trial, into the courtroom, and then my boss turned to me and said that the parties were settling. But so I was involved in all of the trial prep for that. We did talk to all of the witnesses that we could, that were witnesses that we were calling, to just sort of talk about what they can expect, how, what we need in terms of like for them to be around at certain times, and how the court expects them to dress, things like that. And then also, kind of going over their testimony a little bit, not to feed them testimony, but to say like, this is where your experiences fit into this particular case. The reason why you kind of have to be careful about that is that you're not supposed to be feeding them information. You need to make sure that you are doing everything as ethically as possible, because there are certain rules for that, but also because, I mean, realistically, we want these trials to go according to the evidence, right? Is it possible that you put a witness up there and they start saying things that you think are not true? Yeah, it's possible. Does that create some ethical questions for the attorneys? Sometimes, yeah. So anyway, but good question. Pamela C says, do people who do the autopsy get paid to testify? They have not yet talked about that in this with this testimony. So I don't know, actually. I can't remember. Someone who's done some criminal cases will absolutely know. But basically what I would say is that the coroner is a state employee. Anytime they are compelled to do their work somewhere, depending on if they're salaried or if sometimes some government employees, even professional ones, are on some sort of an hourly kind of basis. My guess is that he's probably salaried, in which case he probably isn't paid any extra for his time to testify. But this technically is work for him. It's part of his work is also testifying. So technically he would get paid for his time for it, but I don't know if he gets paid any extra on top of his normal pay, because like that would depend on if he's salaried versus, hourly, for example. Pamela C also said, have you ever gotten used to these kinds of picks being a lawyer? Yeah, I would say, yeah, like if I were an attorney trying a case with these kinds of images, as gruesome as they are, they're pretty rough. Being there in the room during the autopsy, I don't know that I would want to do that, which lawyers don't necessarily need to be in the room for that. I think that's probably just Hollywood. But the images, yeah, I mean, basically that comes down to like, could I try this case with these kinds of images? Yeah, I think I could. I could put my analytical brain on, and do that. These are also the kinds of cases, though, like that when you find yourself having to stare at these kinds of images for so very long, you end up coming home at the end of the day and like hugging your spouse or your children or your pets or all of the above, because they're just difficult, right? Ms. Amanda says, have you ever had to be a lawyer for someone in a case like this? I have not. My practice has always been in civil cases, but I would venture to guess that other people in law too who have done criminal law probably have done some very interesting cases that are probably a lot like this one. I mean, there's a reason why this one had such national focus, right? And part of that is because of the fact that it was so gruesome. But I would be curious to hear, the stories of other people who have tried gruesome cases. Okay. With that, also I see that, yeah, Debbie Faison Cook asked for the merch link for the Hogue Law merch shop. Thank you for asking for that. Thank you to Sigma Squirrel for posting that. So you guys can see that in the chat. If you are in a position to do so, maybe you've been looking for some merch or you've been thinking about getting some merch for a while. Now is a fantastic time to do so, to help support Rick and the whole Hogue family. And if you don't have the funds to actually, pay for any merch right now, fantastic idea to go to his channel and watch all of his content, because that's ad revenue that he can make from that. So whatever you can, even if it's in the background of your living room while you're doing chores, that is absolutely a great thing to do, to show some love for these wonderful people, because I've said it before, I'll say it again. Rick is one of the kindest, the best people, one of the brightest souls I've ever had the privilege of meeting and getting to know and being friends with. So yeah, it's been a tough few days for the Hogue household. Hopefully things will be continuing to look encouraging as they have, as of late. And but at the very least, prayers, thoughts, good vibes are also very, very, very much appreciated. So yes, if you haven't done so already, go visit his channel, go watch all of his stuff, whatever chance you have. Okay, now with that, I think that is about all that I have for today. On Friday, we've got Bike Club members only live stream. So if you are a member of Bike Club on YouTube, part of YouTube memberships, join in for that. Otherwise, I've got some deep dive content that I'm working on that I will be getting out hopefully within the next couple of days, hopefully very soon. So keep an eye out for that as well. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. See ya.